So, have you noticed this from Apple? Every year, like clockwork, whenever Apple releases a new iPhone, they use the same words. This is faster, better, and stronger than the last one. And as we all know, Apple has mastered the art of how to deliver message on stage, where they get to paint this picture in your mind on how this is the greatest iPhone of all time. But in 2018, they did something different, something no one was expecting. They announced an iPhone that was not having none of their fancy features. So they did not say much about it, but that iPhone became the best budget and the most sold iPhone Apple has ever made. So this is iPhone XR. It was released 7 years ago, alongside with iPhone X and XS Max. So should you buy iPhone XR in 2025? Let's talk about it. Now, if I'm to advise you on whether you should or shouldn't buy iPhone XR in 2025, the decision is going to be based on 4 major factors. So the battery life, the build quality, the software update, and the camera. Okay, so let's go through all that, and hopefully we can see through this from past reputations and figure out if the iPhone XR is worth buying after 7 years. So a few years back, more than 46 million units of iPhone XR was sold, mainly because the iPhone XR was an iPhone for everyone, but with some few drawbacks. For example, let's take a look at the design. Both sides of the iPhone XR are made of glass with an aluminum frame. This makes the iPhone XR very slippery when holding and prone to sliding out of your pocket if you are not careful. And as a matter of fact, I've already dropped mine, which led to this crack on the frame. So just be careful when holding yours. But apart from it being super slippery, the iPhone XR has been one of the cleanest iPhone Apple has ever made in the past decade, in my opinion. Mainly because of the singular camera on the back. That doesn't attract any attention when you take a glance look at it. And yes, even as the iPhone XR comes in 6 different colors, the white one does a great job at hiding fingerprint on the glossy finish. So if you're one of those people that do not use case, I think this is the perfect color for you. Besides all of that being said, I think it is worth to let you be aware that the iPhone XR is IP67, and this seems to be one of the drawbacks of this iPhone, but it shouldn't be a deal breaker since IP67 is enough for most people. But do not rely on it too heavily, because given the age of the XR, there is a chance that the water resistance ceilings on these older iPhones has worn down by now or been broken altogether through people taking them apart for repair. Overall, I'm mostly a big fan of the iPhone XR simply because even though it's a 7 years old iPhone, it still feels like a solid premium and well-built iPhone. Okay, so to the display, this is where in my opinion things get more interesting. This is the difference versus iPhone XS. This is where Apple at the time was able to make this iPhone cheaper. And this is the most controversial part of this iPhone. XR has what Apple calls liquid retina display. You can ignore the fancy name. It's just a 6.1-inch LCD screen with a curved corners at 1792 by 828 and surrounded by these slightly thicker bezels. I quite remember the time iPhone XR was released. A lot of tech reviewers were pretty critical about part of this side of the iPhone when compared to iPhone XS, and that's because on paper the iPhone XR has a bar screen, like it's not 1080p and it's not even an OLED display. But looking at it now, the display is perfectly okay. If you actually use the iPhone XR, you will immediately realize that the LCD screen is nowhere as bad as the numbers look on paper. The colors on the panels are nice and vibrant with no noticeable color balance issue, and believe me or not, it's actually sharp enough for me at a regular use and gets plenty brightness, so using it outdoors shouldn't be a problem. And it also gets dark enough to be comfortably used at night. So really the iPhone XR does not have a bar screen when you actually look at it from experience of actual usage. But the only practical thing that will make you not to like the front side of the iPhone XR is the slightly thicker bezels all the way around the screen. And to be fair, after a little while you get used to it, but as a person that has used the new iPhones, I much prefer that. However, if you want the bezels to be less noticeable whilst rocking the iPhone XR in 2025, you will need to use a case. And oh, let me quickly mention that the XR got a pair of stereo speakers too, in case you don't have a pair of Bluetooth earbuds lying around. So by now, I'm sure one of the questions you want me to answer is, how well does the iPhone XR runs the current iOS? Well, just like the iPhone XS and XS Max, the iPhone XR also running Apple's A12 Bionic CPU. It's not way close to what we have now, but as old Old as the iPhone XR may be, it still runs iOS 18 and runs it well. Honestly, I think that is one of the things that sometimes Apple does not get enough credit for. Although the XR was released 7 years ago, it still gets software updates that optimize it in 2025. However, because the XR has only 3 GB of RAM, unlike the 10 that got 4 GB of RAM, the iOS 18 on the XR occasionally sometimes get lagging, mostly when you have multiple apps running in the background. But when it comes to daily tasks like web browsing, calling, texting, or watching YouTube videos, and any other minor tasks, this iPhone handles them with ease. I even went ahead to test some graphical intensive games like Call of Duty, and I did not notice any frame drops or lagging. I think it's mainly because iOS 18 does have game mode, which stops all apps from using the iPhone RAM when you are playing games. So I think it's safe to say that unless you have the XR like right beside something like iPhone 12 Pro Max or higher, it will not or should not feel like a slow phone at all, at least in 2025. But it sometimes gets hot occasionally. I mostly find it doing that when it's off and I turn it back on. But other than that, I think it's safe to say this iPhone has you covered when I'm using it for stuff like this, at least in 2025. And oh, interestingly, I found certain games run better on the iPhone XR than others. So subscribe so you don't miss out when I post that video. And now the battery. The iPhone XR has 2942 mAh battery, and at the time this iPhone was released, that was a big battery even when compared to the flagship iPhone X at the time, along with lower resolution. But now that we are in 2025, a new software with power-hungry apps, 242 mAh battery is relatively small, but of course usage may vary. Like, take example, I have 80% on battery health and I sometimes get 3 to 4 hours screen on time. That is for the days I use the XR to scroll through social media and watch YouTube videos. But on the days that I use it for graphical intensive stuff like playing games or taking plenty photos, I averagely get 2 hours screen on time. So as long as the iPhone XR you are planning on buying or already get is having at least 80% of battery health, you are okay. And on plus side of things, the XR does have 15-watt fast charging via that lightning port, as well as wireless charging if you prefer not to plug in your phone. Finally, let's talk about my favorite part of the XR, the cameras. So the XR has 2 main cameras, 7 megapixel selfie camera at the front and a single camera on the back. On the back, there is a 12 megapixel wide angle camera, which is the same camera on this iPhone big brothers, the XS and XS Max. You can shoot up to 4K at 60 frames per second for videos. And photos that came out of this iPhone XR camera during my texting were pretty much consistently decent with good amount of sharpness in most cases. And because it's using the same primary sensor from XS and XS Max, the videos and photos from this camera are very good. However, it does not have a telephoto camera. But subtracting that telephoto lens, interestingly somehow, it has both positive and negative side. So the telephoto camera, as we all know, it's useful in 2 ways. One is for optical zoom and the other is portrait mode. But since the sensor on the telephoto lens lets in less light anyway, I think it's much better not to have it at all. And even also you can achieve the same result just by digitally cropping in. And sure, the photos will get a bit less sharper. But if removing the telephoto camera will make the iPhone cheaper, I think it's worth it. So no telephoto camera is not a big deal. And yes, the iPhone XR also has a portrait mode, and because it does not have a telephoto lens, it uses the main primary camera for the portrait photos and it works very well. But there is of course a downside, which is that it doesn't have depth detection anymore. So it's doing pretty much all the work with software, and because of that, Apple has limited it to only photos of human faces. And the other thing is this iPhone don't have a night mode, and in 2025 that can be seen as a major drawback. But when seen from other point of view, when the XR was released, there was not night mode anyways, even on the XS and XS Max. Now, to my final decision, with all the previous points I've listed, should you buy iPhone XR in 2025? And my honest answer to you is no. First of all, don't let me fool you with all the nice things that are said about the 10R, and here's why. iOS 18 is going to be this iPhone's last software update, meaning there's not going to be iOS 26 for the iPhone 10R, but there's still going to be security updates in case you still want to buy it in the used market as your second daily driving phone. And I have found the best deals on the marketplace for you, link in the description below. However, I will not advise you to buy this iPhone brand new in 2025 because it costs $170. You add a little money and you can get yourself an iPhone 11 Pro in the used market. So there you have it. If you find this video interesting, that means you will like more on my channel. So subscribe if you haven't done that already so you don't miss out my next post. Peace out.